My name is Martha. I'm sitting in my old Honda, driving away from the family reunion park. The silence in the car is a comforting contrast to the chaos that just unfolded. As I look in the rearview mirror, I see my family standing there, a small, sad, frozen group, watching me leave. It's a moment I've both dreaded and awaited for years. The family reunion was supposed to be a time of togetherness, but for our family, it's always been a showcase of success and wealth. My family is divided between the Thompson side, made up of my father's family, who are all in business and very material-oriented, and my mother's side, the Harrisons, who are more like onlookers, gossiping about the Thompsons' achievements. The head of this so-called family system is Uncle Richard. He's my father's older brother, and ever since my father passed away 5 years ago in a car accident, he's taken on the role of the family patriarch with gusto. I remember my father's funeral clearly. It was a rainy day, and I was heartbroken, crying silently into my handkerchief. Uncle Richard, on the other hand, was all business. He was directing the funeral home staff, shaking hands with people as if he was at a business meeting. When he gave the eulogy, he didn't talk about my father's kind smile or his love for fishing. Instead, he rambled on about how my father had successfully run a small marketing firm for 25 years. It was more like a pitch about a legacy than a heartfelt goodbye. After the eulogy, he patted me on the head and said, "Don't worry, Martha. I'll take care of everything." And that's when my long-standing role as the family's cautionary tale began. Back in college, during Thanksgiving dinner, the divide between my cousins and me became evident. My cousins were all talking about their futures. My cousin Daniel was pre-law, and my cousin Olivia was studying computer science, aiming to start her own tech startup. Uncle Richard turned to me with a demeaning look and said loudly, "Martha, still wasting your time on that psychology thing?" I replied, "Uncle Richard, I'm thinking of getting my master's in social work. I want to help people." He laughed, that pitying laugh that made me feel like a little child with a silly dream. Social work? Martha, good intentions won't pay your bills. You need to be practical. You can intern at my real estate company. I'll teach you how to make money. My father, who was caught in the middle between his love for me and his respect for his brother, just mumbled, "She'll figure it out, Richard." But Uncle Richard saw it as our failure, and from then on, I became the example. "You kids work hard," he'd say at Christmas, raising his glass. "Study business or law, or you'll end up like Martha. Smart but directionless." Over the years, it didn't get any better. My aunts would give me that sympathetic pat on the arm and say, "Don't worry, dear. You'll find a nice husband and settle down." They thought my purpose in life was to get married. My uncles would offer me job tips like, "Martha, I know a place hiring a receptionist. Good pay, good hours." They never bothered to understand what I actually did. They just heard the word nonprofit and assumed I was barely surviving on donations, working in a soup kitchen or something. I once tried to explain to Aunt Laura at a barbecue. I told her, I work for a non-profit organization called Global Hope Alliance. I'm a project manager for their poverty alleviation programs in Africa. I handle budgets, logistics, and I write grant proposals. But as I was talking, her eyes glazed over, and she interrupted me to ask Daniel about his new Mercedes. "That's a beautiful car, Daniel. How does it perform?" After that, I stopped trying. It was easier to let them believe I was the quiet, unsuccessful one. My simple clothes and my old, paid-off car just confirmed their narrative of me being a failure. This year's reunion was like every other at first. By noon, the picnic area had turned into a stage of self-promotion. The air was thick with the smell of charcoal and burnt hamburgers, and the kids were running around near the pond. My cousins were showing off their achievements. Daniel was bragging about how he was on track to become a junior partner at his law firm in a year. He was wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Olivia was scrolling through her phone, casually mentioning that her startup had just secured a new round of $2 million in funding. They were all so proud, and their words felt like arrows in my heart. Uncle Richard, holding a glass of champagne, walked over to me. He had that smirky look on his face, the one that said he was about to put me in my place. "Martha," he said loudly, making sure everyone at the table could hear. "Still working at that charity job?" I simply replied, "Yes, Uncle Richard. I'm still at Global Hope Alliance." He sighed dramatically and looked around the table, as if performing for an audience. "Ah, Martha. Always doing the charity thing. Must be nice to live on just goodwill. Some of us have real jobs and real bills to pay." His words were followed by a few chuckles from the group. Even my mother forced a smile. "Richard, be nice," she said weakly, but I knew she was embarrassed by me. "I'm being nice," Uncle Richard said. "It's time you got a real job, something that pays well." I just said quietly, "I like my job." He laughed again. "Of course you do. It's not really work, it's more like a hobby." I was used to these comments. For years, they had made me feel small, but today was different. I was tired of their mockery and had been waiting for an opportunity to change their perception of me. And then, it happened. All of a sudden, the chatter at the park died down. Everyone was staring at the small parking lot as a sleek black limousine pulled in. It was out of place in this park full of minivans and old sedans. A tall woman in a sharp business suit stepped out. She had short, graying hair, and her eyes were full of confidence. She straightened her jacket and scanned the crowd. I recognized her immediately. It was Dr. Amelia Grant, my boss, the CEO of Global Hope Alliance, an organization that runs programs worth over $300 million globally and advises government agencies on development strategies. Uncle Richard, seeing an opportunity to network, rushed over to her. He held out his hand and said with a big smile, "Welcome. I'm Richard Thompson, a real estate mogul in this area." "Are you lost, ma'am?" Dr. Grant looked at his outstretched hand and then politely replied, "I'm here for one of my colleagues. I'm looking for Martha Thompson." The moment those words left her mouth, every head in the park turned towards me. I was standing there near the trash can, holding a stack of dirty paper plates. There was absolute silence. I could hear the birds chirping, and I saw the shock and disbelief on my family's faces. My mother's mouth was hanging open, Daniel froze with his fork halfway to his mouth, and Uncle Richard's smile vanished. Dr. Grant walked right past Uncle Richard and came straight up to me. "Martha," she said warmly. "I'm so sorry to interrupt your family time, but I had some wonderful news. I was on my way back from a meeting and remembered you were here. I couldn't wait until Monday to tell you." She then turned to my stunned family. "We had a project review today, and I wanted to congratulate Martha in person. She was just promoted to the Director of International Programs at Global Hope Alliance. She oversees 25 projects across 5 continents, and her strategic planning and grant writing skills brought in over $15 million in donor partnerships last quarter alone." The silence that followed was deafening. Uncle Richard stammered, "Director? Of what? That little charity she works for?" Dr. Grant's smile tightened, and she said firmly, "Global Hope Alliance is not a small charity. It's a leading international organization in poverty alleviation, education, and community development. Martha is one of our most valuable assets, handling multi-million-dollar budgets and leading teams on the ground. She's practically the right-hand person to me." My Aunt Laura gasped, Daniel choked on his drink, and Olivia looked at me with a new sense of respect. Or maybe envy. For the first time, they were seeing me not as the directionless cousin but as a successful professional. I didn't say a word at first. I just let the silence do its work. The years of their mockery and dismissal were finally being erased by the truth. After what felt like an eternity, Uncle Richard cleared his throat. You never mentioned that, Martha," he said, his voice full of accusation and shame. I looked at him calmly and said, "You never asked." Those words hit him like a punch in the gut. He flinched, and for the first time, he had no response. Then, like a switch had been flipped, my family members started to scramble. Aunt Laura scurried over, saying, "Martha, dear. Can I get you a drink? You must be so thirsty." My mother rushed towards me with tears in her eyes and said, "Oh, Martha, director. This is amazing. We must celebrate." Daniel and Olivia walked over together. "Martha," Daniel said seriously, "that's quite an achievement. I'm impressed." Olivia asked, "So, what's the focus of your international projects?" But I saw through their sudden change of attitude. They were respecting me not for who I was but for the title and the money-associated success they now saw. I felt nothing but emptiness towards them. I knew this was not real love or respect. I decided it was time to go. I walked over to the picnic table, picked up my empty picnic basket, and zipped up my cooler. My mother saw me and pleaded, "Martha, you can't leave. We haven't even cut the cake yet." I replied, "I'm not hungry, Mom. I have to go." She tried to stop me, saying, "Your uncle is just embarrassed." I looked at her and said, "He's embarrassed for himself, not for how he's treated me all these years." I walked past my aunts and cousins, who were all silent as they watched me. When I passed Uncle Richard, he grabbed my arm gently and said in a soft voice, "Martha, I owe you an apology." I looked at him and said, "You don't owe me an apology. What you owe me is respect. And I've always deserved it, you just refuse to see it." I got in my car, placed my basket in the back seat, and started the engine. As I drove away, I didn't feel angry or sad. I just felt a sense of calm. I had won my freedom. I would no longer be their entertainment or their cautionary tale. I was just Martha, and finally, that was enough. Weeks later, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Thompson Real Estate. I smiled and picked it up. "Martha Thompson." "Martha." It was Uncle Richard. His voice was nervous. "Hi, Uncle Richard," I said. "I was thinking," he began. "Your organization, Global Hope Alliance, is doing some really great work. I was wondering if we could partner on a community development project. It would be great for our company's image." I listened and then said, "Send me the proposal. I'll review it. I'm the one who approves these community partnerships now." The long silence on the line was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard.